Welcome to English Language for SS1 at LightTech Academy. Today we practice comprehension in the WAEC examination format. WAEC comprehension, what to expect. In the WAEC English Language Paper 2, the comprehension section requires candidates to 1. Read one main comprehension passage, usually 30 to 40 lines on a Nigerian or African topic. 2. Answer approximately 5 to 8 questions testing explicit meaning, implicit meaning, vocabulary, tone/attitude, and literary devices. 3. Additionally, there is a summary question. You must write a summary of a specific part of the passage, usually 5 to 6 specified points, in a set number of words, e.g., in not more than 120 words. WAEC Comprehension Marking Scheme. Questions on the passage, typically 1 to 2 marks each, must be in complete, correct English. Summary question, typically 10 to 15 marks, based on content accuracy plus summary/language skills. Sample WAEC-format comprehension passage and practice. Passage. The Great Sahel region of West Africa, once the breadbasket of ancient empires, is undergoing an ecological catastrophe that threatens the livelihoods of tens of millions of people. The advancing Sahara Desert, creeping southward at an estimated rate of 48 kilometers per year in some areas, has turned fertile farmland in northern Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Niger Republic, and Mali into barren wastelands. In Nigeria alone, desertification now affects 11 states in the north, reducing agricultural productivity, displacing rural communities, and aggravating the deadly conflict between Fulani herders and farming communities that has claimed thousands of lives over the past decade. The consequences for ordinary Nigerians are devastating. The once mighty Lake Chad, which lies at the heart of this crisis, has shrunk by 90% of its former size over the past half-century, from 25,000 square kilometers in the 1960s to barely 2,500 square kilometers today. Communities that depended on the lake for fishing, irrigation, and drinking water are migrating south in desperation, adding to the pressure on already overcrowded cities like Maiduguri and Kano. Children who once played on fertile fields now walk miles for water, and schools that used to thrive have been abandoned as families flee the creeping dunes. Some argue that the primary cause of desertification is natural climate change, the gradual warming of the Earth's atmosphere that is shifting rainfall patterns across the globe. Undeniably, global temperatures have risen by approximately 1.2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, with dire consequences for regions already at the margins of rainfall viability. But many experts, including ecologists at the University of Maiduguri and the Nigeria Erosion and Watershed Management Project, NUMAP, argue that human activity is equally, if not more, responsible. Overgrazing by cattle herds that have grown beyond the land's carrying capacity, reckless clearing of trees for firewood and farmland, and the collapse of traditional land management systems that once regulated how the land was used, all these are accelerating the desert's advance. Hope is not entirely absent. The Great Green Wall Initiative, launched by the African Union in 2007 and championed by Nigeria among its member states, aims to plant an 8,000-kilometer belt of trees and vegetation across the Sahel from Senegal in the west to Djibouti in the east. If successful, it would be the largest living structure on Earth, and a monument to what African nations can achieve in cooperation. By 2020, approximately 18% of the wall had been completed. Nigeria, for its part, has committed to planting 25 million trees annually as part of its national reforestation strategy. Communities in Zamfara, Kebbi, and Sokoto states are being trained in sustainable land management techniques and traditional practices like the farmer-managed natural regeneration (FMNR) method, which encourages the regrowth of native trees on farmland, are being revived. The fight against desertification is ultimately a fight for the survival of millions of Nigerians and West Africans. But it is also a lesson in what can happen when a society loses its relationship with the land that sustains it. If the Sahel is to bloom again, it will require not just trees and technology but a fundamental rethinking of how people and nature can coexist before the desert reaches a point of no return. Questions. 1. According to the passage, At what rate does the Sahara Desert advance southward in some areas? 1 mark. Model answer. According to the passage, the Sahara Desert advances southward at an estimated rate of 48 kilometers per year in some areas. 2. What does the phrase "the breadbasket of ancient empires" in paragraph 1 suggest about the Sahel region? 2 marks. Model answer. The phrase suggests that the Sahel region was once extremely fertile and productive. It supplied food, bread, to the great empires that flourished there historically, such as the Mali, Songhai, and Kanem-Bornu empires. Breadbasket implies a region of agricultural abundance that fed and sustained the civilization. 3. In your own words, explain 2 effects of Lake Chad's shrinkage on Nigerian communities. 2 marks. Model answer. First, communities that previously depended on Lake Chad for fishing, irrigation, and drinking water have been forced to migrate southward to cities like Maiduguri and Kano, placing additional pressure on urban resources. Second, children must now travel long distances to obtain water, disrupting their education, as schools that once served thriving communities have been abandoned due to population displacement. 4. For what reasons do the experts at the University of Maiduguri and NUMAP argue that human activity is responsible for desertification? 3 marks. Model answer. The experts argue that human activity drives desertification through 3 main factors. Firstly, overgrazing by cattle herds beyond what the land can sustainably support has degraded the vegetation cover. Secondly, the reckless clearing of trees for firewood and farming has removed the natural barrier against desert encroachment. Thirdly, the collapse of traditional land management systems that once controlled how the land was used has allowed unsustainable practices to flourish unchecked. 5. What is the writer's attitude towards the Great Green Wall Initiative? Support your answer with evidence from the passage. 2 marks. Model answer. The writer's attitude is cautiously optimistic. The writer acknowledges the scale and potential of the initiative, describing its possible outcome as a monument to what African nations can achieve in cooperation. However, the word "if" in "if successful" and the fact that only 18% of the wall was completed by 2020 suggests that the writer is hopeful but realistic about the challenges involved. 6. In not more than 60 words, summarize the solutions mentioned in the passage to combat desertification. 5 marks. Model answer. Approximately 55 words. The passage outlines several solutions to desertification. The Great Green Wall Initiative, backed by the African Union, aims to plant an 8,000-kilometer vegetation belt across the Sahel. Nigeria has committed to planting 25 million trees annually. Communities in affected states are being trained in sustainable land management, while traditional farmer-managed natural regeneration techniques are being revived to help restore vegetation on farmland. 7. Find in the passage a word or phrase that means the same as each of the following. A. Total loss of fertility. B. The ability to sustain life. C. Revived/brought back. Model answers. A. Barren, from barren wastelands, total loss of fertility. B. Viability, from rainfall viability, ability to sustain life. C. Revived, last paragraph, are being revived, or use regeneration, FMNA method. General WAEC Comprehension Exam Strategies. Before reading. 1. Look at the questions first. This tells you what to look for when you read. 2. Note whether questions ask for explicit or implicit information. 3. Note word limits, especially for summary questions. While reading. 1. Read the passage twice at minimum, first for overall understanding, second for specific answers. 2. Underline key information, names, statistics, key phrases, as you read. 3. Mark which paragraph each answer is likely to come from. When answering. 1. Use complete sentences at all times, unless otherwise instructed. 2. Paraphrase, never copy the passage word for word. 3. Answer exactly what is asked, do not add irrelevant information. 4. For explain in your own words questions, change the vocabulary and the sentence structure, not just one. 5. 4. Evidence from the passage, quote the exact phrase then explain it. 6. For summary, write in flowing prose, stick strictly to the word limit, include only points from the passage. 7. For vocabulary, find in the passage a word that means, the answer is always in the passage. WAEC exam tips. 1. Comprehension carries significant marks in WAEC English, practice with past questions regularly. 2. Know the difference between explicit and implicit questions, see previous lesson. 3. For Nigerian WAEC passages, common themes, desertification/environment, education, corruption, health, malaria, HIV, democracy, cultural values, development challenges. 4. The vocabulary section, Q7 type, learn to look for synonyms within the passage itself, not from memory. 5. Summary writing, the most challenging part, practice writing summaries of newspaper articles, The Punch, Vanguard, to build this skill. Summary. WAEC comprehension, passage plus 5 to 8 questions plus summary question. Types, explicit, stated, implicit, implied/inferred, vocabulary, tone/attitude, literary devices. Answer strategy, complete sentences, paraphrase, exact evidence, word limits. Summary, own words, flowing prose, within word limit, only passage content. Practice, past WAEC papers, Nigerian newspaper articles, Nigerian topics, environment, corruption, education, development. Powered by LightTech Academy academy.lightech.com.ng NECO-approved SS1 English Language.